I'd like to welcome everybody to the Planter, Sprayer, Air Seeder Clinic by Valley Plains Equipment. What I'm going to talk about today is a 4730 sprayer with a 2630 Green Star 3 display. What we have here is first initial startup for the season. So we took it out over the winter and put it back in the sprayer, and it doesn't recognize what it was in last. The guidance is off, the track spacing is different. So what we're going to do is we're going to set up the layout manager and set up our run pages for the sprayer. Hit menu, layout manager, then you hit this box here where you want to put the sprayer. You pick the 4730 sprayer and it gives you the picture of the sprayer items that you want. You hit that, you hit the enter button, and now page 1 of 2 we got our sprayer on the home page. We got our client farm and field over here. In tracking mode is guidance off. We're going to change that to straight track so we can auto track. And right here it says 30 feet spacing. We're going to change that to 90 foot because this is a 90 foot sprayer. And you always got to hit accept to say it has 90 feet, and we have no track in there because we didn't pick a heading. Here's a bunch of drop down menus, like it's got miles per hour here. I mean, you can change that to many things that you need to look at, but we'll leave that one at miles an hour. And your fuel tank, you know it's full of fuel, so we'll probably change that to gallons per minute, which is a good thing to look at when you're spraying things like over 10 gallons per acre, because we'll talk about that later, what that means. And your gallons per acre, what you're actually putting down, and your temperature for your engine. Right here is your manual target pressure. You'll want to use this when you're cleaning out your sprayer. You got to have this on manual or else it won't spray, because the sprayer controller thinks you're moving. So you got to change that to manual. And how you do that is you turn this knob here, and it's got 1, 2, and 3 Roman numerals that mean rate 1, rate 2, and rate 3. And up here it's highlighted rate 1. You cannot hit rate 2. You can hit rate 2 and change these to whatever you want, but if you hit rate 2 and put it at 20 again and hit enter, it didn't change the highlighted portion. It's still on rate 1. And you got to turn the knob on the console to change to rate 2. And that's how you change your rates if you change rates during the day. If you do change rates during the day without shutting off the sprayer, it recognizes what you were at last. So if you wanted to spray 20 after dinner and you sprayed 10 before and you didn't shut the sprayer off, you're going to go out and it will not achieve 20 unless you shut the sprayer completely down. Turn all power off. Okay, right here we got our water level tank volume for our solution tank. Every time you refill, you're going to have to hit this and change your tank reset volume to whatever you have in the tank. So say you have 750 in there, hit 750, enter, full refill. It changes your current tank volume to that, and hit enter. It's saying you have 750 gallons in there. Down here we have our sections for our boom. This is a 7-section sprayer with L3s all on the left, L2, L1 center, and then R1 and R2 and R3 on the right. If they're black, they're on for the master switch. You can change them over here by manually turning these rocker switches down, and in turn it turns the highlight off of the display. This is good for if you're cleaning out a sprayer, if you want to clean out each section individually so you don't waste so much water. It's a good way of doing it. And as you turn it back on, all these highlight black again. Okay, now we're going to talk about Boom Track Pro. It's an option on 30 series sprayers. What it is, it's an automatic boom leveling sensors to keep the booms level down the field. And you hit on Boom Track Pro, and you got 2 target modes to select, canopy and ground. What we've seen, canopy seems to work the best in any application, pre-emerge, post-emerge. anything that just seems less jumpy. Then you got five responses to choose from: low, medium, medium, high, and high. You can play around with them. They all seem to work okay. There again, it's a common sense deal. If you're coming up 10 miles an hour to a big drainage ditch, it's not going to be fast enough to react. So just common sense goes a long ways with this. The target height input mode is usually the best on match center frame, and that's going to match the center boom to keep the outer booms the same level as the inside one. And once match center frame is selected, you only got one number to choose from on target height settings. And like this is set at 20 inches. That's just a number. It's not 20 inches off the ground. It's just a number to tell the computer. So if you want to change it to 50, the boom should raise if boom track is enabled. Make sure they're check marked over here for all that.
Do you want to...
Here we got target height settings. 20 is the lowest number you can go. And it's not really 20 inches off the ground. It's just a number to tell the computer that that's the lowest setting. If you raise the number, like say to 50, it'll go up, say 20, 25 inches, or maybe even 30. It's just, but you can go up to 98. Okay, down here we got park, symbol, transmission gear, low fuel, and solution pump. Once you take the hydro handle out of park, that light will go away. Then once you hit the speed selector on the hydro handle, that transmission gear changes, and you got a 4-speed transmission. 1 through 3 is operating mode in the field, and 4 is road speed. Gear 1 will give you 12.5 miles an hour. Gear 2 will give you 16 miles an hour, and gear 3 will give you 20 miles an hour, and gear 4 is 30. And this is a low fuel light. If we had low fuel, that'd be highlighted. The solution pump switch is right here on the armrest. And as soon as you flip that forward, it's going to highlight the screen and telling you the solution pump is on. Once the solution pump switch is on, we'll turn the agitation on, which is right here. And Deere recommends you turn this off when you get below 200 gallons of solution left in the tank for foaming reasons. Here's the left ventral nozzle, right ventral nozzle, and the ladder switch. Say you don't want to get out of the seat and let someone in, here's a rocker switch so you can put the ladder down. Now we'll talk about a little bit of maintenance on a 4730 and 4830. Inside these suspension scissors, there is some bushings that want to wear out, and it makes the steering wobble after a few years, and that'll affect your auto track. So it'd be a good idea to check your bushings, jack it up, and see if there's any play in there. There should be hardly no play at all. What we have here is the agitation valve on the left side of the machine. Best operation for this valve is probably quarter open. It's just a 90-degree valve. That's closed. That's open, so that's full agitation, which will probably create way too much foam. So probably just close it off to quarter way open, and it should be enough agitation for anything that's sprayed around here. Here are the two main solution filters for the boom. These are the only two filters on the sprayer for the solution side. There's no boom strainers on the booms. These should be cleaned weekly for sure. It depends what chemical you're spraying. They could be cleaned daily. It all depends if you're getting erratic pressure and rates. This is most likely your problem right here. These are full of gunk. What we got here is a boom track sensor on the outer boom. It is supported by a brace, but as you can see, this one is bent up too. It probably hit a RA pole or something. And if your boom track automatically goes way up, your boom tips go way up, this sensor and this bracket get bent back far enough, it will read the main frame of the boom. So it's thinking this is the ground, so it's telling this boom to go up because it's contacting the ground, but the sensor is actually reading this if it is bent enough. And this one could be that way. I mean, it's pretty close to reading this bar. What we have here is it's a 2-inch valve that's all the way open right now. We want this open when we're over 26 gallons per minute of product going by the flow meter. And that can be read on the 2630 display in the cab under one of those drop down menus. Usually this is open when you're spraying over 10 gallons per acre, over 14 miles an hour. So if you're spraying 20 at 12, you'll want this open. And when we close it shut, and we're really not closing it, it's about a 1/2 inch hole open in there right now. And what that does is it creates restriction for the flow meter to keep up at lower rates of product. This is just basically to keep the flow meter accurate when you're spraying below 10 gallons per acre. Then before the flow rate control valve, we have a flow meter. This basically is just counting the solution going by. And this is definitely a weekly, if not daily, occurrence to clean it with brake cleaner. The stickier the chemical, you might have to clean it twice a day. It all depends if your pressure and rates are all erratic. It's easy to clean. You just go to your right over here, close this main valve, and you come back here and you turn this out. And this should be just hand tight. You don't have to put a plier on it. You should be able to just tighten it down, and you should come back the next day and just take it off by your hand. It'll seal up just fine.
The right tool for the job is right in your pocket with the My John Deere Operations Center. It's the tool you need to easily and quickly analyze and share data. You can access it anytime, from anywhere you have an internet connection. With the Operations Center, your operations data is turned into information you can use, like reports and maps. Evaluate average yield, total yield, average moisture, seeding variety, and seeding rates by field and by variety. Then, easily share that information with your agronomist or trusted advisor. You can even compare field variables to write better prescriptions and send them wirelessly to your machines. Location history lets you monitor a machine's location and progress over a 60-day period and tells you whether it's idling, at work, or in transport. You can also monitor fuel use to know when to send fuel trucks. And with one click, you can send a prescription wirelessly to the machine, so it's ready for the next job. Real-time weather information allows you to make decisions about applications where weather conditions are critical. You can pull up radar to determine what's happening now or see a 5-day outlook for your location. The Field Analyzer can help you see how individual fields are performing. With just a few clicks, you can see a side-by-side view of average performance, current year performance, and a color-coded map showing what's changed, so you can make effective agronomic decisions. The Operations Center allows you to easily and securely collect machine and agronomic information and help you turn that data into better insights for you. Make it better. Make it yours with My John Deere Operations Center.
Hello everyone, my name is Josh Bruley and I work out at Valley Plants in Crookston, and today we're going to talk about DB planters and John Deere planters in general. So here we're looking at our DB66 planter, and we're going to connect to 8530 John Deere. And so when we hook up our tractor, it's important to know which position to hook the hoses for the best ease of use and for the correct automation in the tractor. So to start with, on our number one valve, which is our bottom valve in this tractor, we want to make sure that we have our lift pressure hose. That's our main lift. We need to have that hose connected in the number one valve, so our pressure side on that particular valve will be on the left side. Our return oil line will be on the right hand side of that valve. That'll be our number one valve for our main lift and raise and lower there. Our number 2 valve is going to be used for our marker fold or slash or tongue cylinder. On a DB planter bar, we have a tongue cylinder as well. So similar to our number 1 connection, we're going to have our pressure side of our hose is going to be on the left-hand side of the valve, and our return hose is going to be on the right-hand side. The best way to hook it up is this way. That way we know when we use our number 1 or number 2 valve, pushing down on the control lever will lower the planter, and raising up or pulling back on the control lever is going to raise our planter. Okay, the next 2 valves that we have here, which our hoses aren't quite going to reach today, but they will for you when you're hooked up. We have our vacuum pressure and another vacuum pressure. So one will be basically our CCS blower, and one will be for our vacuum motors. Okay, now these are our pressure lines, so we're going to send oil out on these. Now, in order to make these work the way that they should in the cab, we need to hook these up on the right-hand side, opposite of the pressure lines on our lift cylinders. The reason we need to go on the right-hand side of this is we can use our number 3 and our number 4 valve in the cab, and we can go ahead and push it in the forward position to flow oil into these valves. When we flow oil into these valves, it'll go through these hoses and then run our orbit motors for our vacuum. If we don't do it that way, if we were to put it on the left-hand side, we'd pull back, and then there's no float position to relieve the oil pressure when we shut it off. So it's important to make sure we hook these into the right-hand side and then use our valves, number 3 and 4 valves, to push forward to flow oil. Now, when those are hooked up, then we can come down here and we'll have our return lines, and we can just dump them straight into the return side of our pressure and return ports. So here's my vacuum return, and here's my variable rate and my vacuum return also. So that's also returning oil. Now the last hookup, or one of the last hookups here, would be our variable rate drive, which we're going to use on the pressure port down here on the tractor. So this port will always be getting oil the whole time the tractor's running. It simply won't be using any oil because we're not commanding it to flow oil or to run the variable rate motors. The last hydraulic hookup then is this little guy down here, which is very important. We don't ever want to run an orbit motor without having this low pressure drain line hooked up. This drain line is going to let any oil that gets past the seal, it'll make it return into a very low pressure, basically into the sump of the tractor, and won't keep any pressure on the oil seal of the motor, causing any damage. So it's very important to use that line and have it hooked up. And it's always important to, on any orbit motor, to go all the way into float position whenever we shut that motor off. That's our hydraulic connections. Now let's talk about our electronic connections here real quickly. So on a DB planter, we have 2 Vanguard style connectors that hook up our electronic connections. They are for the 1/3 width disconnects or 1/2 width disconnects, and for the planter frame control box. These need to be hooked up separately than the CAN bus connection. The CAN bus connection happens on the back of the tractor, and that's where our implement connector, that's what we call an implement connector, gets hooked up. And then lastly, our 7-pin for our lights. One thing to consider when we're talking about an exact merge planter and looking at the options available to create the 56-volt system and to get that power to the planter. On this particular model, we have what's called a PTO-mounted generator, and this is a good choice for people that maybe need to free up some hydraulics. With this, we won't use hydraulic motors to run the alternator system on the back of the planter. This way we'll run a PTO. We just need to make sure that this generator runs at a specified RPM to make sure that we have the power available. If we choose this option for our power source, we'll also be able to not have the batteries on the back bar. This way we won't have the maintenance of the batteries stored back there. So with this generator option, we will not have the batteries, and we'll free up a set of hydraulics. So on the planter we have looking at here today, we have a DB66 with the MaxEmerge 5 row units. This is new row unit for this year. Some of the main differences from the Pro Series or the XP row units is we have the straight through feed boot. So our flow will come right through without having an elbow on it. We still have a different boot that's available, and they need to be changed. So for large seeds, we'd be using a boot similar to this, and we're running sugar beets or smaller seeds, we'll be using the slotted boots. So make sure that you have the right boot in for your setup. We come around. Another big difference on the MaxMerge 5 is the ease of use on the double eliminator. We have that on a knob right here. We have a gauge that shows us what our setting is, and we can adjust that right here on the meter itself. 0 obviously would be completely out of the way. We can get to a middle number. Somewhere around 5 is about having the whole halfway covered, is about what 5 is. So you can adjust it a little more infinitely from there. And so that's a big change on the MaxMerge 5. If we come around to this side, we'll notice that on the MaxMerge 5, we still have a brush, and so on a MaxMerge 5 we only use one brush, and it's a single step brush for all seed disc types. Now on the earlier model row units, we did, if you were using a ProMax 40 and a few other seed discs, we would need a double step brush, so keep that in mind. On the Pro Series or the XP, we'll need to make sure that we have a double step brush with using a ProMax 40 disc. The next part that we're going to talk about here is our door, and so that hasn't really changed at all. We still have a door seal. We need to check those every year, make sure that they're soft, pliable, and that they're not grooved out anywhere. And then we have our knockout wheel. Now on the MaxMerge 5, there's several different knockout wheels available to fit several different planter plates. Another thing about the knockout wheel is that there's no screw to hold it in anymore. It just simply has a tab that you push, and then you can pop the knockout right out without any tools. And you can put the scraper or the knockout wheel in place. So next what we're going to look at is our ProMax 40 disc, which is unchanged. That will fit this MaxMerge 5 and will also fit the Pro Series and the XP. Now this disc installs the same way. So we will get it to slide in here, lock it down. Now with we have to adjust our gap here, or our meter hub drive. So what they're saying in the operator's manual now is it should spin about a quarter turn freewheeling after you let go. And so this one may be a little tight, but it is still very important to make sure that we have the right gap and the right tension on our hub to keep our crop from, or our seed from grinding up or slipping through the cracks. So down here on the MaxMerge 5, now this part is virtually unchanged from the previous models. So we still have our gauge wheel and we have our blade or our disc opener here. So the disc openers or the discs wear, and when we are down to a 14-inch diameter or less, then we need to replace these discs. Also, when they wear, as they wear down, we need to make sure that we keep our pinch point or our V, our true V measurement correct. The best way to get that measurement, as what we've done here, is we've got 2 business cards. We will slide them in until they get stuck on each side. Now we need a 1.5 to 2.5 inches through here, and that's our measurement. So if we had a 2-inch gap here between our cards, that's the correct V setting on our discs. So as they wear, we will need to adjust those. So we can adjust those from inside by taking off our wheel. So another adjustment that we'll need to make is on our gauge wheel is that we need to be maximum a 1/16 of an inch or tighter right on the tightest point on our disc right here. So if we're further than a 1/16 of an inch on my tightest point down here, then we're too far away. We want to be just touching that disc, but we don't want to have any resistance while we're rolling that gauge wheel. So we can adjust that by adjusting this bushing back here, or we're moving our arm in or out. So we'd loosen this, and then we would turn the bigger nut in or out to get my correct depth inside there. As we move around to the back side here, our trailing arms or our closing wheels, this whole trailing assembly, we want to check these bushings as it gets older. Now it's important to note that before we check those bushings, we want to make sure that we don't have any tension on those spring there, so that we can get a real feel of how loose or tight the bushings are. Now we can also adjust that by moving the cam inside there to move your closing wheels to cover up the row correctly. Now something that needs to be done almost every year is walk, as you have the planter in the ground, make sure that your closing wheels are actually closing that furrow. Otherwise, sometimes as they wear, they'll be riding to one side. One thing that's important to note that with the CCS planter, that our pressure that we are sending to send the seed through the CCS tank is very important to help us from plugging. Now, especially with the Pro Series or XPs, if we have more pressure than desired, then we will also plug just as fast. So it's very important to follow the operator's manual guidelines and start with that pressure setting, and then only change about 1 psi up or down as you're adjusting your settings. Any drastic changes than that can cause us plugging with going too far the wrong way. So we're under our CCS tank, and we're going to open up our trap door here. And for the guys using small seed, sugar beet farmers and such, it's important to note that we need to install a nozzle insert on our tube here. That's basically going to just restrict this down a little bit. It'll help us control the flow of the small seeds through here. We want to make sure we run that nozzle insert on small seeds, and then we want to make sure we have that out of there when we go to larger seeds, such as soybeans or corn. Also with our CCS tank, when we're running small seeds, we will also recommend that we disconnect our agitator motor, which our connector is right here, and that will help to keep the agitator and the agitation from grinding up and or pelletizing that seed that's sitting in the bottom of the CCS tank. So here we have the monitor from our DB66 planter, and we have it out to the cabin so it's easy for us to look at here. A couple things we want to review. As you can see that we have a SeedStar 2 setup. Here we have our 36 rows of our planter. Here we have our individual sections of our row command. Green means that they're ready to be planting, that they're able to plant. Red bars obviously mean that they are not planting at the present time, but as you start going, they will come up off this bar graph. This bar graph is my target of 36,000 seeds per acre. If we're overseeding, we'll be up here. If we're underseeding, we'll be down here. With our SeedStar 2 functionality, we have our pneumatic downforce. Now, our pneumatic downforce information is displayed down here. Now, this target of 40 now means 40 pounds, like weight pounds, of downforce is going to be added to that row unit. Now, it's important to note that it's added besides the weight of the row unit. So if the row unit weighs 120 pounds, and we've added 40 more pounds to that, so we have 160 pounds of downforce. Now on this monitor, that's all we can control, and that's all we're going to see. Now, once again, downforce is always how much weight we have pushing onto the ground. On some of the XP models, we would have a sensor that would tell us how much margin we have then. Margin is always what's left over after we've penetrated the ground. So on this setup, we're just going to be able to add downforce. We're not going to be able to see how much we have remaining. On the models with XP, that will show us a margin number. Now the margin is what's left over. We always want to have some margin, because the margin, a positive margin number, means that we are actually for surely penetrating the ground. Next, we would want to look at some of our sensor possibilities or setups and what we would want to do yearly with those. So we'd go to our planner configuration here. So here we're on our drives. We're going to go into our sensors. So our seed sensors should never change, and we'd never need to really change anything unless we've turned some off if we've had some seed tube sensor problems from the previous year. But one thing we want to do, of course, is get to our vacuum. Now our calibration value would never change, where our sensors are, number of sensors and where they're at, that doesn't change. And when now they're reading me a value here, we know that we have no vacuum. We want to zero those at least once a year. We can go ahead and touch this and make sure where vacuum is off, and we'll select 0 right down here. Now we got a value of 0. So that helps to make sure that we have a precise vacuum reading. And we want to go ahead and do that with almost all of our sensors. We have a fertilizer sensor on this particular setup, and we have it hooked up for our liquid fertilizer. And you can see right now it's got 0.7 psi right now. Now our cal value, that should be a number that if we've added a fertilizer sensor for you, that number should be figured out. So we don't want to adjust that number, but we do want to make sure we zero that sensor also. So we're going to zero our fertilizer pressure sensor. The next sensor that we want to look at is going to be We don't necessarily want to do anything with our height sensor. We need to be prepared to raise and lower that. Now, that's not a sensor that we need to adjust every year. But one sensor we want to do, next one we want to do would be our PDF air pressure, pneumatic downforce air pressure. This is the sensor that is in the air tank on the back of the planter. Right now it's 0, and that's good. We'll still go ahead and continue with the calibration. Now, also on this page is our low pressure alarm and our step value of if we wanted to quickly bump that button on our run page, how many increments, how big of an increment it's going to go. Right now we're on 20-pound increments. But we'll go over to here, and our calibration value is 494. That will never change. Simply we will make sure we have no air pressure in the system, and we can zero that out. So we're already at 0, but we would want to make sure we do this every year as well. So our step value is 20, so if we go to our home page, or our run page, you can see that when we go to our target of our downforce pressure, we can target it up or down in the 20-pound increments.
Rise and shine, growers. Today is a new day, but not a new day in planting. The day was 2 years ago when we introduced the true next generation of planters. Since then, Exact Emerge has been in the field, raising the bar on uniform emergence, plant population, near infinite spacing possibilities, and of course, blowing through tight planting windows at an industry best 10 miles per hour. With one singular brand that offers total integration from the tractor cab to the planter. You won't find any other supplier's components in the operator station, and certainly no one else's delivery system on our row unit. We should mention it's been third-party tested by some of the leading research institutions in the country. More importantly, it's been farmer approved. All the game-changing technology you'll ever need is right here, with even more solutions waiting in the wing. This is a new day in productivity. This is performance that pays. This is Exact Emerge.
Hi, I'm Don O'Neill from Valley Plains Equipment in Jamestown, North Dakota. I'm going to go around the 1775 Exact Emerge planter. I will take Exact Emerge apart for you. This is the mechanism inside that carries your seed down, and this is where your seed comes out at on the bottom. Here's your seed sensor, and these here are your motor drive and disc drive. And on here, this is your meter housing for your seed discs for corn or soybeans. Here's your double eliminator brush, basically. You might have to change this for your different crops. Seals, knocker.
Hi, this is Matt Grove with Valley Plains Equipment. Today we're going to walk through a 1770 NT run pages, which are going to be a little bit different than your traditional run pages on the MaxEmerge 5 or the Pro Series row unit. So starting off on the 2630, we're going to start on the home page, and we're going to go in and we're going to go into our ePlant functions. So as we look at the functions of the display, you'll notice the soft keys on the right-hand side are very similar to what you see in the past. A little bit different layout though as far as your run pages on the top of the screen. We can see our percent for skips and doubles, our coefficient, and then also looking at our downforce margin and target ride quality are now located at the top in the center of the run screen. So as we go through the right-hand soft keys, this is our planter main is the letter F soft key. Going into letter G, going to be very similar to our previous planters and set up for our rate configuration, what disc type we're using, again, what crop we're working with. Just a reminder, as you look at rates, for those of you that are getting into variable rate prescriptions, we can run into errors when we have rates 1 through 5 enabled and we're trying to run rate 6 with the prescription at the same time. So just go ahead and make sure you have rates 1 through 5 disabled. That way we know we're just utilizing our prescription-based seeding. So Going down, look like our previous screen before, we have our totals options, just basically our productivity, acres an hour. Again, if you want to reset those per field or the beginning of the year, go ahead and just use the reset, which is the right-hand arrow with the 0. So as we get down to letter I, we look at our planter setup. Again, very similar to our planters in the past. We're going to start with the frame. We're going to also notice that we have different drop-down menus on our frame tabs. So now we have our frame configuration, we have our planter name, planter data, planter dimensions, as well as GPS dimensions if you're using this planter in an active implement guidance situation. Once we get across from that, again, we go through our planters. Same type menu, we look at our drop-down boxes, so we look at our height for our drives when we want to enable and disable those. Look at tractor speed, seed, our positive downforce with the air pressure, gauge wheels, vacuum, fertilizer, and ride quality. Again, all these tabs are set up in our initial setup in the spring, making sure we've calibrated and gone through each one of those independently before we get to the field or the first thing when we get to the field. Finally, we'll look at our third tab, which is our drive. Again, in the drop-down box, we have our mapping groups. So if we're doing multi-hybrid seeding or splitting the CCS tanks, we have the ability to assign the variety to those rows to isolate our mapping groups. Then we also have our row control sections. So again, with the ExactEmerge, we're looking at our electronic drive system. So we have the ability to do section control with the electronic rows. In the past, your section control was driven by row command. Finally, our last one is just the display, any advanced settings that you want to look at there. What we're going to do is go down to the diagnostics now. Same thing as we had before. Now we're looking at our meter control software. And we're going through all of our RUC hardware software versions, RUC addressing, and system voltages. So again, with the ExactEmerge planter system, we have a RUC, also known as the row unit controller, that is located on every single row unit. That's controlling those 2 electric drive motors for our seed meter as well as the brush belt. System voltages. This just allows us to look at our ECU supply and our sensor supply for all of our 12-volt system functions and 5-volt system functions as the voltage is converted down from our electronic power generation. Next in our diagnostics, we have a planter runoff. This allows us to go ahead and look at a target population, a target speed, and cycle this planter in a stationary setting, which allows us to see how close we are to target population, if we have any skips, doubles, so on and so forth. If we want to get down and dive into that a little bit closer, we can do a single row unit runoff. So again, we're looking at our target population, looking at our target speed and row spacing, make sure that we have our electronic power generation on, all of our vacuum is at the recommended levels, and we can go ahead and go through and look at how close we are in the meter tests, as well as looking at the seed test of that row. So are we hitting that population, skips, multiples, so on and so forth. So that's kind of our diagnostics. Finally, we'll go back to our planter main on our soft key F there. And you'll notice that on the ExactEmerge planter, you'll have the power generation on and off button. So whether you have the onboard generator or you're using the PTO-driven generator, you'll have to make sure that the planter is initialized, everything's booted up, those are running correctly, and we could turn those systems on to make the planter come live with the 56-volt system. Last change, we talked about settings and our planter setup for our downforce. You'll notice that up here we have our active pneumatic downforce that has our margin and our actual applied pounds. As we're setting this system, remember as we look at margin, it's any additional force we need to get that row unit in the ground above and beyond our set point and what the weight of the row unit is. If you want to change any of those margin numbers on the fly, everything's live on screen. We can increase or decrease margin. Get back to that, we can just hit the back arrow. So thanks for listening. Hopefully this helps with the setup of the 1775 NT.
My name is Mark Lura. I'm from Valley Plains Equipment of Valley City, North Dakota. We're going to go over the monitor functions when you hook up to your 1910 air cart and how to program and be ready for your season.
I'm Jared Elliott. Going to go over a few things on the 1910 air cart. Everything we will go over, it'll be in the operator's manual, so you can look back at that too. You come back here, everything you should need to calibrate your meters will be right inside your box. You'll have your bag for checking your weight, You do have an extra plug in here, and then your scale should come right in this box too. Just open it up. A lot of them are digital now, some of them are still the old style. They both work the same. You'll remove your bottom cover. Once that's off, you'll take your seed bag, and they got nice handy little hooks here for you. Hook it on the other side, get this side on, then just pull your string tight. And that'll keep it into place while you're trying to fill your seed. While you're calibrating, you're going to make sure that your doors are shut. Otherwise, you're going to spill seed everywhere. And make sure that both levers are fully down so it'll fill your meter properly and you'll get the right seed. You're also going to make sure that your chain isn't binding up, getting rusty. Make sure everything's moving freely. While operating the air cart and while calibrating, you got to make sure that your valve is pushed in so your hydraulic oil is spinning your fan. In your operator's manual on page 85-2, it'll talk you through how to calibrate it. You go up to your main menu, you select your air cart. After that, you'll come down and you'll select which tank you want to calibrate. Once you select your tank, you'll hit the calibrate button. With your tractor running and your SCV on for your air cart, after you hit the calibrate button, you're going to come down and hold this switch and watch your meter. After it does 2 complete revolutions, you can let go of the switch, and that's to fill your meter with seed. After you fill your meter with seed, you'll hit your select button on the calibration page, and after that you'll be able to do the calibration process. After you hit the select button for your calibration, you'll walk back here with your tractor running and your SCV engaged, and you'll hold this switch down until the meter stops turning. After your meter quits turning, you come back here and remove the bag. Make sure you don't spill any of the seed or it could throw off your measurement. After you remove the bag, you'll just come over and hook it on your scale, and that'll give you a reading on how many pounds your meter ran through it. You'll take your number that you got off your scale and you'll put it in the box for the right tank, and then you'll repeat the procedure for each individual tank.
Hi, I'm Tim with Valley Plains, and we're going to be going over the tank here on this drill. First, we got our section control meter. It's got little doors, shut your sections off. When you pull these meters and inspect them, make sure this foam strip's here. If not, you're going to get a lot of false alarms. And another thing to check is to make sure there's no debris up in the back, on the back side of here, and there's a little magnet in there. Make sure that's there. And then that's your basic section control. If it's a standard meter, it just won't have these little doors. Another thing to check is the meter. Make sure you can spin it freely with just your fingers, giving it a spin around. If not, you'll have to disassemble it and clean it, and it's a good idea in the fall to disassemble and clean all the sections. You can take the bolts out of the end, slide her apart in sections, pull these sections out, and blow it out really good with good dry compressed air, and you should have no issues then. Then when you come down to in your meter housing, on the other side is a drive for it, but there's a agitator shaft in here that likes to stick, and that'll shear your pins too. That's the basics on these meters. I'll slide that. Make sure you lock everything so don't take off on you. Rip the wires off. All right, here's a drive on your hydraulic cart. This is that agitator arm drive I was talking about. If that's stuck, which they can be, there is a grease zerk that usually needs attention, but they'll stick in the middle due to fertilizer buildup and not getting cleaned out correctly. This is your new style speed sensor. Make sure your chain is not sticky and stiff. And that is the basic drive on a hydraulic drive cart. Another thing to check is on your conveyor, make sure your belt tension, you just pull it tight by hand, and make sure that you blow and clean this out really well. If you don't, it'll start to rust out, and you'll see the rust start down on this end and up here at your pivot is where they really, really like to rust out. If you do a lot of fertilizer and you don't clean up after it.
When you're filling it, you just got a safety lever here. Pull your pin out and pull the safety latch. Come down to the catch and you lift it up and off the bracket. Then you'll have to drop it down, swing it all out. After you have your auger swung out and you're ready to load, you'll have to switch your diverter valve, just pull it out, and then it'll be switching and you'll be ready to load. After you get done filling your tank, you're going to make sure you clear your seal surface, make sure there's no seed sitting on it. You leave seed on there, you'll get an air leak. Then you'll have population issues when you start going down the field.
Well, I'm JB, and I suppose most of you know that I used to work on these things quite steadily. We're going to talk about the openers on 1890s, 1990s system. It's the same opener system for both of them. Maintain is make sure that your wheels have between 3 and 5 millimeters clearance so you can spin them just so the mud doesn't get packed in between them. On the discs, you want them to where you keep your bevel point. The most you want to wear off is approximately 1 inch on your discs. Then you'll start seeing, especially in your wheel tracks, you'll start seeing seed laying on top of the ground. And your pressure, even when you put too much pressure on it, it'll lift your tool off the ground. It still will not cover seed. Check your bearings on your closing wheels, of course. Your discs are all greased or bearings. Your openers, of course, you want to make sure that the spring holds those against the discs so it doesn't build up with crap in between them and dirt, straw, whatever. This little tab right here, a little piece of plastic prevents the seed bounce out of the furrow. You have your closing wheel here. This is a press wheel here that pushes the seed down to make sure it doesn't bounce out beyond the tab. Closing wheel closes your ridge. Most of the time it does a very excellent job of closing the furrow over the seed and making good seed contact. As I say, it's basically the same opener. It looks identical to me. Your adjustment on it is the same, 1/8 inch for every notch down. Check your chains every year. Make sure your chains are in good condition because it will affect your feeding rates and just plain downtime. Spray them if you got to use oil or chain lube on them. Use a multi-purpose John Deere lube. It works the best. It doesn't attract the dust like others do. Check for air leaks and hydraulic leaks, and make sure your tire pressures are all within specs like they're supposed to be. And generally speaking, then you'll have a maintenance-free year.